Thanks for tuning in to the Just Go Play podcast, where we look to develop and promote a positive youth sports experience. As always, we are available for speaking and private engagements and can be reached at info@justgoplay.ca. You can also catch full video versions of our podcast on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to visit us at justgoplay.ca. Enjoy the episode.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Just Go Play podcast, where we learn everything about quality sport management and the hot topics of the day. Really excited today. Joining me all the way from Texas is a good friend, Mike O'Donnell. We had the pleasure of, I think we're in our third year of our relationship, and we have discussed pretty much every single facet of sport, particularly as it revolves around athlete development, coach development, the educational pathway. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. Can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself to start off, to let people know why you're in front of the room?
Well, yeah, first of all, thank you, Matt, not just for having me on the podcast, but for your continued leadership in sport and trying to really create a new and better world for everyone that's associated with sport. And both myself and the PGA of America are very happy to be a part of your vision, quite frankly. Yeah, I mean, my background, grew up in British Columbia, Canada. Became a golf professional when I knew I wasn't going to be a playing professional, which thankfully happened very early in my life. It's always good, I think, to know that you're not good enough soon so you can get on with something else. And was very fortunate to work for a man named Jack McLaughlin, who's a legend in the golf world, really. And through that relationship was introduced to a lot of good players and ended up assisting Jack as the Canadian national team coach. And then when he unfortunately passed away, became the head coach. And through that, just, we did at the time, right, late 80s, early 90s, some really cutting edge things in golf. Today, they're very commonplace, but we were among the first to work formally with sports psychology and fitness people and nutritionists, and we did some neat things. So I have a background in elite golf, coaching at elite levels, but really found my passion in kind of helping other coaches and coaches, if you will, and ended up being recruited to join a large company in the United States, American Golf. We ran a very large program there. It was the largest golf instruction program in the world at the time. There's a couple that are bigger now. And it was very successful, and it really had coaching at core of the consumer experience and driving the core business through the relationships that coaches can create. From there, was recruited to join Nike Golf, managed the marketing and sports marketing departments there. And then was lucky enough to be recruited to join the PGA of America. And really kind of have never looked back. Love the position that I have and the people that I get to work with every single day. It's a real pleasure. And, we're in the midst of a pretty significant change in the way the business of golf operates and to a degree, the way the sport of golf operates as well. So, we're going through all the change management issues that I'm sure most of your listeners are going through themselves.
Fantastic. Brilliant. I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but I want to start with one of the things that you said. You were one of the first groups to introduce sports psychology into the dynamic of coaching. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and unpack that and talk about your experience and why that's so important and why do we keep seeming to miss that? Why do we keep, and I know you're a big fan of the 5 C's. Why do we keep missing the 80% and keep focusing on that, 20% of the competence? Why do you think that is?
Well, because I think it's an easy place for people to go to. Right. That it's what's always interesting. Well, maybe not to everybody, but it is to me. And certainly I'm impacted by the people that I worked with early in my career, some of them were phenomenal, right? Phenomenal from a talent perspective. And they never quite made it. And you'd look at somebody who was sort of less than physically, and they did make it. And I'd always ask myself, why, right? And that why question, when you go down that path, starts to create some visibility to the other layers of the onion that aren't just physical, right? And when you get there, you quickly realize that human performance, and I'm not talking just about sport performance here, but obviously that's our main focus. Human performance is so much more than just about the raw sort of, hate to say it, but the piece of meat that's in front of you, right? That raw talent that you just see. It's so much more than that. And ultimately, when you get to the very highest levels of sport, it's as much about lifestyle management and sort of making good life choices as it is about, you know, your time in the 40 or what your ball speed is or your launch angle in golf. So I'm much more interested now in what I like to call integrated performance models, where obviously there's a minimum physical requirement to participate, to play at a high level in any sport, right? You're not going to be a wide receiver at the NFL running a 5.8 40. I mean, it's not, right? But you don't have to run a 4.1 either. And so we got into that because innately we just recognized there was more to an athlete's performance than the normal golf metrics.
Right. Interesting. And it's interesting because we've had previous podcasting. Gene Smith a couple of weeks ago got on and talked about the exact same thing. Hey, listen, you know, sure, there's the need for the elite level talent to show up at The Ohio State University, but we're actually interested in the values. We're actually interested in the character and the connection and those developmental pieces as well. Andreas Wenzel was on a podcast, the former World Cup downhill ski champion from Liechtenstein, said the exact same thing. So it seems like we're saying the exact same thing, but a lot of people aren't really embracing that. And again, I really like what you said, because that's the low-hanging fruit. That's easy. You know, just get the talent in. If they're talented, we'll run. It's a transaction. We'll run them through. We'll get them out, and you know, everyone wins, and then we go on our merry way. Changing gears here, because you've done a lot of work in coaching around the relationships, and I really like what you said about the coaching is a relationship. And what are some of the things that you're doing at the PGA of America, or you're instituting through your group and the people that you lead, to really take that relationship to the next level?
Yeah. So thank you for the question. This is going to sound very sort of academic and theoretical, so I apologize to your listeners for this, but you know, so many of us like to think that we live in a linear or binary world, right? If we do this, then this will happen. But we don't live in that world. There is no black and white, and it's sort of all gray, right? So what we try to do on our team is understand that at the end of the day, the consumer, the golfer, is going to decide whether they're going to participate in the sport or not. So it's incumbent on us as coaches to really thoroughly understand that consumer and what they really want from their golf experience, right? So, if we strip away, again, layers of the onion, we get down to the very most basic level. And as human beings, we all have a need to belong to something, right? That I think that's why sport is such an incredibly powerful influence in society, right? We belong to the Ohio State University, right? We're part of that tribe, or we're the tribe of the Montreal Canadiens or the New York Yankees, or like me, Chelsea Football Club. And so in the golf environment, there's all these little micro communities that exist at a golf facility. Some might have 20 or 30, right? So we try really hard to arm our coaches with the understanding of what those micro communities look like and how to build relationships within them. So give you an example. If a stay-at-home mom has just sent her youngest child off to university, right? And she's invested probably 20 to 25 years, assuming there was an older child, in her family and in her children. And all of a sudden, there's no children at home, right? There's a huge void in that person's life. Golf can fill that void, and it can fill it meaningfully with meaningful relationships. So we try to proactively reach out to her in this example and get her included into a group at the facility that is meaningful for her.
Right.
And every golf facility sort of has that, right? So, and then you do that, what about the elite junior kid? What about the kid who just wants to learn the golf? What about the senior, who may have lost a spouse and is lonely? I mean, all of those things play into golf. And one of the great things about our sport is you can play it literally from, sort of 3 years old to 103.
Absolutely.
So it gives us lots of opportunity. But that's what, essentially it's, how do we create environments where people can belong? And once they belong, then how do we get them to thrive inside those communities?
Right. So that's big picture thinking. So I'm sure you don't just roll in and say, okay, this is what we're doing. And everyone goes, oh, okay, Mike, perfect. Let's rock and roll. What are some of the barriers that you come across? Because what you're talking about is creating that culture. And that's, as we know, we talk about it all the time, vision, mission, values. That is basically the foundation of any successful anything. How do you onboard coaches that may be a little bit more traditional, or golf courses that may be a little more traditional and have their way? How do you onboard them to this new type of thinking? Because it's obviously after they see the results, it's easy, but how do you onboard them through that process, that initial process?
Yeah, so it's a pretty significant change management. I prefer the term change leadership exercise, right? And what we're basically involved in here is this tradition-laden sport, and much of that tradition is incredibly positive and good, but not all of it. And trying to help really the owner in whatever form that is, more than our member often, to understand that they're in the customer management or customer experience business, not necessarily, the rules arbiter of the game at their facility, right? So traditionally in golf, you show up and the starter tells you all the things you're not allowed to do today, right? And you said, what a great way to start your day. You're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, don't do this, don't go there. And you're kind of like, well, I guess you really don't want me here, right?
Right.
So we start and we handhold through what historically, I'd like to figure out a way to make this happen quicker, but throughout my life, it's just always been a 3-year kind of process. First, you just got to start and get momentum, and then do the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing.
Right.
And we've been engaged now with what we call a multi-course operator, or MCO, in our industry for starting the 3rd year, and we're just now starting to see really significant positive traction. We had little wins along the way, but it takes time because it's hard to change human behavior. Right.
And so I want to dive in there, because now I want to take us out of the PGA, which is well funded. It's got smart people like yourself and your team that are going in and doing this. What do you see and say to people that are in the youth sport business? We got a $12.6 billion a year in the US, $8.7 billion, $7.8 billion a year in Canada. 3 years is a long time to cycle in that kind of expertise and management into a youth sports system for our local community association. How do we get there as a society with your learnings? How do we get there faster, in your opinion?
Well, I think first of all, we just need a sort of a codified system that people recognize as having great results.
Right.
So I think it gets quicker when people can follow something that they believe in, right? I think the biggest challenge we face, quite frankly, this might not sit well with some of your listeners, but the traditional hierarchies of sport aren't really put in place to increase participation, right? They're there to either take care of the interests of an owner group if they're at the highest levels of sport, or they have some sort of TV rights, situation that drives their revenue, that drives their behavior. And the very highest people in organizations aren't really held accountable for the sport experience at local levels. Right. And I'm not necessarily advocating that they should be, but it perpetuates this notion that because we have money, we should get together and just throw together a program and that magically the sport will grow. But all sport is local. All sport is local.
Right.
And it takes place when that child or adult, in the case of our sport, shows up at the facility, and the experience is either going to meet their expectation or hopefully exceed it, or it's not. And if it doesn't matter what the program is, it's going to fail.
Right.
I think that's the starting point, right? I think if we collectively, this sports industry, can just understand that simple concept, then I think we can change behavior more quickly. And then it's just a case of modeling, what works best, and then iterate like crazy, right? Sort of learn from Apple and get something that's good, that's out there, that means something to the consumer, and then make it better every single day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I actually do think it's the responsibility of the high performance organizations and some of the bigger organizations, whether it's an NGB or an NSO, to be responsible for educating at least and engaging that development level, because at the bottom of the sport pyramid, you have the least educated and most self-interested people operating pretty much unchecked and without any resource. And then we're wondering why that funnel or the sport pyramid is starting to implode and collapse on itself. So one of the things that I've taken from you, and particularly from you, that I've shamelessly flaunted, I've always referenced that it came from you, is the tenets of quality sport management. So it really ties into what we're talking about here, as the start of a framework to start thinking about how do we bring this together, because as we know, the sports system is gone like this, and it's pulled people apart in intellectual silos. What we want to do is actually bring it together. Can you talk about those four tenets, where they came from, how you see them impacting sport in a positive manner? So one being organizational alignment, two being discipline project management, three being stakeholder connectivity, and the fourth being the integrated operating environment. Can you touch on that a little bit? Where did it come from? What do you think the potential is for that, and for other organizations to take that, learn from it, and maybe make that the start of the new model?
Yeah, so it came just through trial and error. That was part of my experience working with a large multi-course operator when I first came to the United States, and I quickly realized that the biggest challenge for us scaling that model were the internal sort of silos, right? And in this particular model, there was no income ceiling for the coaches. They could make as much as they kind of earned, right? And that quickly got them higher than some of the facility general managers, and in a few cases, even higher than regional managers. And that caused a lot of heartache, right? We have this very backward idea, I think, as a society, that the org chart, right, each layer you go up, that person should make more than the one below it.
Right.
And I think in many cases, the person that's growing the business should be the one who is rewarded the most, right? Not necessarily the administrator. So we worked really hard internally to just get the organization aligned to what we were trying to accomplish. And it took an inordinate amount of time.
I bet.
Of course, when you're spending your time on that means you're not spending your time on things like training coaches and following up on consumer feedback, et cetera. So that was the first thing that I just recognized that. And to this day, I think that that's the biggest challenge that any sport org faces. And I don't care if that's the local soccer club or hockey club or the NCAA,
right,
or the PGA of America. It's aligning everybody internally to a desired outcome, and then helping everybody understand what their role in achieving that outcome is.
Right.
And then creating accountability for that. So that's the first thing. And the other one is at the operating level, at the facility level, getting, having what I call an integrated operating environment is just a little microcosm of what I just talked about. It's making sure, in our case, right, that usually it's a multi-million-dollar business, a golf course. So it's making sure the general manager understands what the coach should be delivering, the coach understanding how to deliver that, and then making sure that everyone at the facility understands the role they play in the consumer experience. And that's very different than having a sort of tactical operations mindset, right? So if you did it, to take the analogy of an ice rink, if you think your only job is to sort of scrape the ice, get it clean, let the next group go out, whether that's a team or open ice skating, and not make sure that, the rental skates are well taken care of, that people are greeted in a friendly manner, that the hot dogs are fresh, whatever it is, that every element of that is building a better experience for the consumer,
right,
then you miss the point. You could have the best ice sheet in the world, but if you have the worst sort of customer experience before people get on the ice, they're never going to want to go back, right? That analogy can play out in every sport. Disciplined project management is just a business necessity. You've got to run your business appropriately, and we use project managers that have a background in our sport, but also have PMP certification. They're part of that professional body, and we manage every element of our business through that sort of Gantt chart project management that everyone has 100% transparency to, and there's accountability built in throughout. And without that level of commitment, what we see in sport is often marketing programs, what are our talking points for this next big event? What's our media facing message? Thinking that now all those things need to happen. I don't want to leave the impression that I don't think those are important. They are important. But if that's all you do, and you don't focus on the core consumer experience, then I'm sorry, in my experience, I've just never seen a sport increase its participation with that outlook.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, I am the strongest adversary of campaigning your way through behavior change. Behavior change is a leadership and mentorship exercise that requires time. It requires somebody with the experience, just like you said, your team, the PMP, the Gantt charts, the accountability to that. We don't see that often in a lot of sports, particularly at the grassroots level, because it's all volunteer. They're just doing their job. They put their hand up, you put them in a spot, they have no experience, and you're throwing the keys to the kingdom to them. And then you're wondering why everything's going south. So I'm a big fan. This is not a campaign. This is not let's get a Marcoms team together in a room. We're going to get better at sport. Hooray for everybody type thing, which we continue to see funded. Again, because I think going back to the beginning of this conversation, it seems to be the lowest hanging fruit and the easiest to do. It's just like focusing on the physical and technical tactical competence versus trying to weave in and understand, hey, how do we take this young man or woman on the golf club, of course, and weave in character, weave in connection, weave in confidence, so that we can actually make them a golfer for life instead of this, road to the 70 championship, 10-year-old putt and drive champion, and whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. Thank you for that. And thank you for actually coming up and sharing that framework, because I really think that framework going back to something that you said before was, organizations, we don't really have a system, an operating system. I think that those four tenets are a good segue and start into building your operating system. And if you can build them around them, because nobody ever disagrees with those things, you need all those to get to the next level. I think that's a great start. Now,
yeah, I just add, Matt, sorry to interrupt you, but I should have said this earlier. I think if you do get that operating model right, and in my experience, what we've seen is explosive growth, right? Not 3, 5, 7, 10%, but 20 to 50, and in many cases even up to, this sounds like a huge number, almost ridiculous, but up to 1,200%, right? So you're like making this program that was 50 kids into 800 kids.
Right.
There's such a thirst for quality sport experience from parents that if you can provide it, whatever the sport, you're going to have, you'll be bursting at the seams.
Yeah, such a great point. Where is your focus right now, Mike, in terms of, I know we've talked a lot about athlete and coach development. Where is that focus? Is that the focus of the PGA right now? I mean, let's park COVID, let's park the time we're in. Where's the focus when we bring it back better, when we build it back better?
Yeah, so honestly, my focus is mostly how do we leverage that sort of operating model, right? And investing a ton of time in developing. We have a field staff of 12 in our department. We have another department called Career Services inside the PGA of America that has a field staff of 18. And those field staff, along with our 41 regional offices that we call sections, are really the sort of the conduit, the touch point to the coach in our our world. So we're trying to arm them with that understanding so they can go out and implement it and sort of handhold through that process. So what we're really trying to do is kind of operationalize that operating model.
Right.
So most of my time today, actually this week, is all spent on building out those training materials, and we start implementing ours on September the 10th or 17th, whatever that Monday is. I think it's the 17th, but yeah, it's developing people.
Great. And in that process, do you collaborate with other sports? Because golf is such a everyone's second favorite sport is the saying. Do you collaborate with a lot of other sports in terms of building that stuff out, or are you on your own? Or are you in the lead? Yeah,
we have some soft relationships. I don't think we're ever in the lead. I think as soon as you think you're in the lead, you start to get stale and you sort of you begin the process of dying, so to speak. I think we're leaders. I think that, we collaborate kind of loosely, right? We've got a relationship with USA Hockey that we really enjoy, and the folks there have been fantastic to us. Really, really good people and dedicated to, sort of the same road that we're on. We've got a good relationship with the USOC. We've got a great relationship with the USTA. But those are more, I'd say, informal working relationships, right? We learn from each other. We share. We believe that our job is just to share and be transparent, right? That wasn't universally held, by the way. That took about 4 or 5 years of my time inside the PGA to get us to that point.
I bet.
But we believe that certainly this comes from my Nike experience, right? Where we worked with all these great athletes, world-class athletes, and every one of them loved golf. So we say they play their core sport, obviously professionally, and then golf was their second favorite sport. And I think that's true of a lot of people, right? I live in Dallas. Obviously, the Cowboys are huge here. But golf is very, very big as well. 5th largest golf market in the country. And people love to play. So it's really about helping the other sports or collaborating with the other sports to make the consumer understand that it's okay to play other sports, especially for that, 12 to 18-year-old kid, right? We'll have elite golfers and we'll tell them, like, I don't care if you're the number one ranked 15-year-old in the country, go play, ...
Right. And
yeah.
in your mind, are we getting better at that? Are we getting better at promoting the multi-sport participants? I mean, I'd say it.
Yeah, I think sports are, but I don't think parents are there yet. I think there's a massive need for society to provide parents with better tools, right? They only know what they know, right? And the stories that are told. One of the things that we just had the PGA Championship, and it was phenomenal, right? By all accounts, phenomenal. But one of the storylines that I wish had been different was that Colin Morikawa had started golf at 5 years old. Well, I mean, he's not the player he is now because he started golf at 5. And what I don't like to see perpetuated is the storyline that if you don't start a sport by 5, you've got no chance to excel at it, right? Lots of other stories where, professional players didn't start the game till they were 13 or 14 or 15.
Right.
Even Larry Nelson, that's a major champion, didn't start golf until he was 21. We have a long way to go with parents and helping people understand what real athletic development looks like, and then putting in place models to help tell that story and frankly connect them into that mindset. Like what should I be doing with my 12-year-old right now?
Exactly. I really like what you said, connect them to, pull them into that process, pull them into that mindset rather than continuing to hammer them and push stuff out there. Really good. Okay. So wrapping up here, we're super thankful for your time. We always end the podcast with the first steps. So we talked about, we've talked about a lot. We've talked about the relationships has been big, the customer experience, which has been big because I really think that all sports is a customer experience. We need to start thinking like that. We talked about operating systems. Those are kind of our 3 big overarching topics. What would you say to people, the listeners, as the big steps? And it could be golf courses that want to get better. It could be coaches that want to improve. It could be parents that want to, raise their acumen. What are some of the first steps, in your opinion, to creating these better quality sport experiences?
Yeah, well, whenever somebody asks me that question, I typically defer to a very strategic, big picture kind of thought. So I'm gonna answer it 2 different ways, if you don't mind. I think if you're, a national sport organization, however you define that, the first things are you really have to ask yourself, why do we exist, right? Why are we here? And if your answer is we exist to run a national championship every year, then I would suggest that you're missing the point. Even if that is the financial engine for your organization, that's not really why you're there.
Right.
So you got to answer that question. And then once you do, you just ask yourself, how are we going to go about delivering that? And have a very disciplined plan built with 100% transparency to all your stakeholders. So that includes parents, kids, coaches, officials, administrators. Everyone should weigh in on that plan and then understand their role in delivering it. And then the third thing would be measure and hold people accountable for the results, and not measure and hold accountable in a draconian "see, I told you so" way,
right,
but more in a way of like, look at what's happening in Minneapolis, right? They are crushing it with this particular thing. What can we all learn from what's going on in Minneapolis that will make us all better? So it's in a sort of a Kaizen improvement, sort of perspective. We're just going to get 1% better every single day. And then if you're an individual, at the local level, you're a coach or, you're running a local club, I think the first thing is listen to your consumer. What does the consumer really, really want, right? And it's not just enough to send out a survey. You've got to be actively listening and engaged with them all the time. And then, once you understand what they really want, build the systems to support that, right? Coach training, whatever it is. Parent communication is huge in my opinion, but let them know what the club's all about, how you're going to go about delivering that consumer experience, and then again, hold everyone accountable for it. And then once you have success, tell the story in a very positive, sort of human way, right? We have 50 more kids enjoying soccer at our club because we focus on, whatever your key things that you focus on are, and then bring them to life every single day, right? And that sounds really easy, but we've been sports parents, Matt. I was certainly there. My wife was a very elite athlete, not quite world class, but we fall back into the same trap that all adults do. What's our win-loss record? Did we make it to state cup? Where did we finish? Our daughter was, U10 at that point. So I'm not saying we have it right inside the O'Donnell household yet either.
Right.
I think those are sort of the three things, right?
Well, that's fantastic. That's a mic drop. We'll end it off there. Mike O'Donnell, Senior Director of Player and Coach Development for the PGA of America. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing what I think are some of the wisest words and pearls of wisdom that have been actually activated and have shown results. Really appreciate you coming on board. Thanks, Mike.
Well, Matt, great pleasure. And, no one could be more supportive of the mission you're on than myself and the PGA of America. Thank you for your continued leadership. And as always, if there's anything I can do to help either you or any of your listeners, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike O'Donnell, and we'll sign off until we're back next week. Just go play.
Okay, bye-bye.